This is Gemara Metziah Daf Chof Ches, and we're holding on Chof Zayin Amud Beis. We are 5 lines from the bottom, and we continue trying to figure out what is the din of simanim. We've been learning how you could return a lost object based on simanim, and the overarching question that we're in the middle of discussing is this concept of simanim. Is this a biblical concept or is this a rabbinic concept? Simanim daraisa or simanim dirabanan. So we just finished learning that simanim is a din dirabanan, a societal enactment that everyone is happy about. He who finds the item, he who lost the item, everyone is happy that one could give a identifying characteristic of the item and get it back, because they all know that one day we all lose things. One day we'll be on the receiving end, and therefore everyone is happy with such an enactment. Continues the Gemara, 5 lines from the bottom, Elahadit Tanan, that which we learned in a Mishnah, Rashba Goimer Echad, Halayva Mishleisha Yachzer Lalayva. If there are 3 shtarais that one person borrowed from 3 different people, so then it's more logical that it's from the leiva, the borrower, because there's only one borrower. On the flip side, 3 people that borrowed from one person, because then it's more logical that it came from him, because there's only one malva. Says the Gemara, you're telling me it's societal. You're telling me that everyone's happy to return such an item. Says the Gemara, in this case, is the leiva really happy to return it to the malva? Answers the Gemara, Amar lei hasam svarahu. In that story, when we find loan documents, there it's a logical idea that we figure out where is it more likely to have come from. In the regular case of a Metziah, of a lost item, trying to figure out the owner based on the identifying characteristic sufficient, and with that we said that they made a takana to return it. But over here we have a svara, we have a reason, we have a logical proof that it belongs to either the loiva or the malva, each in each case. Explains the Gemara, why? Because there's only one loiva and 3 malves, it makes more sense. We have a hachacha, a proof that it came from the loiva, so return it to him. And the flip side case, the same. Why? And therefore we return it to them. So the Gemara is answering that it's true that it's a din derabanan, and it's based on the fact that everyone's happy to return such an item. But there are stories that I guess we could say supersede the din derabanan, as there are stories in which there's a haichacha, there's a proof who it came from, and in those stories, that's who we would return it to. We turn over to Chav Chesem and Aleph, and the Gemara continues to ask on this din of Rabbah, who said it's a din derabanan elahadit tanan, that which we learned in the Mishnah. Matzah tachlis shel shtaris, and really we're having a nice short chazara through many of the cases that we've discussed already. Says the Gemara, Matzah tachlis shel shtaris. If you find a bundle of documents, a yaguda shel shtaris, a roll or a bundle, harei zeyachsa, you return it. Says the Gemara, hachanami denichle loivel adurle lamalva. Over here, does it make any sense excuse me, is the loiva happy to return it to the malva? Says the Gemara, you're right. And based on this question, on the fact that we see cases that the loiva, the malva, are not necessarily happy to return it. Now let's look at the Tab Rashi, because this is going to be a point where the Gemara flips. So the Tab Rashi speaks out, the end of that Mishnah was what? You find a bundle of documents, and we said that if the malva gives a siman, we return it to him. But let's say the loiva dropped it. Is he happy to teviach taikanta den hadri b'simin? Is he happy with this taikana to return it with a simin? The loiva would prefer that he who found it should keep it forever, because then he, the loiva, doesn't have to pay it back. So we found a situation in which there's a simin. The simin is going to allow for returning of the object, but not everyone is happy. It's true, the finder might not mind, and the one that gives the simin, the malva, is happy, but there's a third party, the loiva, and the loiva here is not happy. So asks the Gemara, we see that the premise that everyone is happy to return a lost object is not necessarily accurate. Based upon this, says the Gemara, Ella Amar Rav, 4 lines down, therefore says Rav, where you're going to flip and say, Simanim Daraisa, Simanim are Daraisa. Dechsiv, Vaya Imchat, it's true with you until your brother inquires for it. We had this drasha yesterday. And how do we look in to figure out if he's a Ramai? Lav Simanim, Shema mi no. Concludes the Gemara, Shema mi no, seemingly proving conclusively Simanim are a daraisa. I say seemingly because in the reality, it's a very large machlekes rishonim whether this is indeed the final step, whether this is indeed the psak halacha or not. And part of the confusion or the debate in the rishonim is because the Gemara proves Shema Mina, but now the Gemara is going to continue. As you look in your Gemara and you notice that clearly the sig is not over, as Rav is now going to continue with an imtim solaymar, continued with a whole lengthy Gemara. That is part of the machlekes. So says Rav Amar Rav, continues Rava, and he says, Im Tim Solaymar, if you're going to tell me Simanim Deraisa, now this line, Im Tim Solaymar, if you're going to tell me this is part of the debate, do we say from the fact that it's an Im Tim Solaymar, if you look at the top Rashi in the first narrow line, Rabusa Nakat, Rashi, this is a Chiddush. Tafilu Aminan Deraisa, Afilu Acham Eidah Difa Kedevar Shvazal. We're going to say that Eidim are even better, Siman of Eidim. So what is this imtim solaymar? Is this bolstering the fact that we're sticking with the din that it's a daraisa? I think the Rambam learns that way, or maybe it's showing that it's not conclusive, which I believe the Rosh learns that it's not. Imtim solaymar daraisa, imtim solaymar, says Gemara, daraisa. You just told me that it is a daraisa. Explains the Gemara, Yaniach. The reason is, says the Gemara, the reason why it's not so pashit is because you could have told me, excuse me, no, I just ran through a stop sign, go back. Explains the Gemara, we could have said, as we answered, that it is indeed with aid, meaning this is the exact same pasuk and drasha that we brought yesterday to prove it's a daraisa. But yesterday we said it's not conclusive, because even though the pasuk says that we could have learned this pasuk is talking about Eidim. Based on the fact that we have another way of learning the pasuk, says the Gemara, that's why it's an imtim solaymar, and that's why it's not so simple. What exactly is the maskana? Says Rava, simanim v'simanim. If each one provides a simin, yaniach, neither one gets it. Siman of Eidim, if one has Eidim, one has a simin. Yinas in the Bala Eidim, the Eidim wins. Siman of Eidachad, if one is a simin, one is a simin and Eidachad. Eidachad, command a less adami, v'yaniach. And no one wins the item, as it's equivalent to a case of simanim and simanim. Therefore, no one wins. Eidarig of Eidin Afil, and now we go into different types of Eidim, weighing the two against each other. One has Eidim that he was the one that wove the garment, and one is Eidim that he dropped the garment, Tinasam Eidin Afilo, which we can understand, of course, because just because you wove the garment doesn't mean someone else didn't get it from you, buy it, etc. Tinasam Eidin Afilo Damrinan, Zevuni zavna. Minashachina nafal. You sold it to him and it fell for someone else. Midas arkai and midas rachbai. If one gives the length of the item, one gives the width of the item. Tinase and lemidas arkai. Why? Dimidas rachbai shuka mishayerle. It's easier to be mishayer. It's easier to estimate the width of an item, and therefore the length is a better simin. Excuse me. Because you can gauge it when the owner is standing and wearing the item. You can be able to look at it and you can tell how wide is the item. Whereas the length is harder to guesstimate. Midas arkai, midas rachvai, umidas gamov. One has, that's the area. You know, say midas arkai again, verachvai. You know, say midas arkai verachvai. Next case, midas arkai, midas rachvai, midas mishkalaisaf. Someone knows the weight. You know, so the midas mishkalaisaf, as we can understand, it's that much more difficult to know the weight of an item. Now we continue with a similar story with regard to a get. If both the husband and wife, each one has identifying characteristics about the paper, you know, saying law, we give it to her. Says Gemara Bimai, what's the case? What were the simanim that she had with the get? But maybe she saw while he was holding it and she was able to tell the size of the paper. Must mean there was a hole in the document in the corner and she knew about that. They each have a simin on the string that ties up the get. You know, she wins. B'may again. The color of the string. Maybe while he was holding the get, she just saw it. That's arka, the length of the string. If they argue about the bag, the holder for the get, you know, my time. Because she, who is married to him, knows where he generally puts his items. So the fact that she knows that the item was in this type of bag is of no proof. The fact that he knows shows that we give it back to him. We continue with the Mishnah with more cases of finding lost assets. Vad Mosai. Until what point Chayiv Lahachris is one obligated to announce that he found a lost item? Says the Mishnah Akadesh Yedu Shcheinav Divri Rameir. Rameir Paskin, until the neighbors know about it. Rav Yudah Omer Shleish Regalim, 3 regalim. Achar regal achron after last yomtiv shiva yomim. Why 7 days after last yomtiv? Tishedach lebeisa shleisha v'yachzer shleisha v'yachriz yoim echad. Because it takes 7 days to get home. Excuse me, it takes 3 days to get home, says Rav Yehuda. And therefore, the 3 days to go home, to check if you lost item, 3 days to come back, and the day of announcing the item. So you need 7 days to give everyone sufficient time to go home and check. And again, so it's 7 days after the last regal being to give enough time. If someone were to have heard it at that point, well, we go home and look to see if it's their item. Says the Mishnah, says the Gemara, Tana. Shcheinei Aveda. The Mishnah said, until Ad Mosai, we said Achi Kidei Sheyidu Shcheinav. So says the Brisa, till the Shcheinim of the lost object. Says my Shcheinei Aveda. What does that mean? Ilei Shcheinei Tebal Aveda. If it's the neighbors of the one who lost it, if you know who lost the item, go and give it to him. El Shcheinei Makayim, of the place that you found it, Shem says by Aveda, means the neighbors of the place that you found the item. Rav Yudah Omer v'chulu. Ask the Gemara, Rav Yudah taught us they have to announce it 3 regalim in 7 days. Why? 3 days to get home, 3 days to get back. For a minute, we'll ask the Gemara in time is that taught us. It's like a third of which is Tesva 15 days. So the last person to get back to Harparas. So what do we see? We see clearly it doesn't just take 3 days to get back, it takes At least 15. Amar Rav Yosef loikasha kan b'mikdash rishon kan b'mikdash sheni. What does that mean? B'mikdash rishon in Efishi Yisrael tuva. It was more of Klal Yisrael that would come to Yoyle Regel to say Behu Yudav Yisrael Rabim Kechol Shal Yam, like the sand in the sea, L'Raiv L'Raiv B'inan Kulei Hai. Excuse me, Kechol Asher Al Yam L'Raiv. That's the end of the pasuk. Excuse me. B'inan Kulei Hai. Therefore, we need more time for everyone to get home. We need 15 days to allow all the Indians to get home. B'mikdash sheni deloy nefishi Yisrael tuva tasibu kol kal kechad arba riba yalafim shalosh meos yishishim. Therefore, lo binan kuli hai. Amalei Abaye asked Abaye v'aksev yisha kohanim v'leviyim v'goymer. But the pasuk says regarding going back to build the second base of Mikdash, Kohanim Levim came back from Mishayrim v'Shayarim v'Chol Yisrael b'Areihem. They all were wherever they were in the first base of Mikdash. So what do we see? Must have been approximately the same distance to go back home, the second and the first base of Mikdash. Says the Gemara. And since this is the case, the opposite makes more sense. That what? Meaning if the same distance to go home, there are just more people in the first base of Mikdash. So says the Gemara, the exact opposite. That Mikdash Rishon, if he sells more Klal Yisrael Tuva, B'mitzavos Alma Mishtachi Sheyart. What does that mean? That means there's more people traveling together, and therefore there's going to be Mishtachi Sheyart doesn't even be they're going to be caravan traveling by day and night. You don't need so much time. 3 days. It's not that many people that are traveling. They're not traveling in such company. There's not many caravans. Therefore, being on Kulihai, therefore you need more amount of time. Teretz number 1. Rav Amar Teretz number 2. Loshan Mikdash Rishon. Loshan Mikdash Sheni. Hadrachur Rabbanan Ba'aveda Yoser Midai. Loidrachur Rabbanan Ba'aveda Yoser Midai. You're right. Maybe it takes more time to travel. Maybe it takes less time to travel. But says Rava, we don't want to be matriach one by an aveda too long, because then one will not want to return the aveda. That is the reason why we only require 7 days after the last regal, 3 days to go home. Amar Ravina, says Ravina, Shema Mina, from that which we just said, from this din of Rav Yehuda, no, we can learn, Ki machriz galima machriz. What do you announce? Says Ravina, must be you announce I found a shirt. If you announce I found something, binan, says the Gemara, then we should give the owner more time at home to look into his items. Meaning, someone says, I found something. Okay, so you go home, and you got to see, did I lose anything? And says the Gemara, it's not so clear. Ela Shema Mina, Galima Machriz, Shema Mina must be the a general announcement that they found Stam a Galima, they found a shirt. Whereas Rava comes along, that's where Ravina learns that it must be Glima Machris. Comes along Rava, 3 lines to the bottom, and he says, Afilu Tema Avedita Machris. I can even tell you that they announced just a Aveda, meaning without the specific details that it was a shirt. So why do you have to wait longer? Similar to what we said before, it's true. Maybe we should give more time, but we're not matriach one by Neveda that much longer. Tana Rabbanan says the Gemara, Regel Rishon, Aimer Regel Rishon, Regel Sheni, Aimer Regel Sheni, Regel Shlishi, Amer Stam. Says the Gemara, when you announce the item, you announce Regel Rishon. This is the first time I'm announcing this item was lost. Then you announce the second time. The third time you just say Regel. Ask the Gemara in the last line of Chav Chesam and Aleph Amai. Lema Regel Shlishi. They should say it's the third Regel. Says the Gemara, they don't say it because you don't want someone to think that it's the second one. They might not hear correctly. Says the Gemara, okay, but Sheni Nami said the second Regel, we have the same problem. That if they announce the second one, maybe they're going to come to confuse it with the first one. Answers Gemara, Akasi Regel Shlishi. If they confuse with the first one, it's not so bad. Why not? Because you still have the third yontif coming along, meaning they're still announcing it. Meaning, when it comes to the third regel, we're more sensitive, we'll call it, to mistakes, because this is the last chance. So if they think it's the second regel, and if at that point they make a mistake, then it's a calamity, because someone's going to lose their item. But if by the second they think it's the first, it'll still be the third regel, so it's not as big of a deal. Tana Rabbanan says the Gemara in the second line of Chachasam and Beis. Originally, anyone who lost an item, anyone who found an item, excuse me, in 7 days have last one. Go home 3. Yachzer should come back 3. Yachzer yom echad. Mishachar Rabbi Zamigdash. When the base of English is destroyed, should be rebuilt speedily. Hitzkino they made a taikana, shemachrizim b'bati knesiyos, u'b'bati midrashos. That they should announce it where? In shuls, in the public places. Misharabu anasim. Then what happened was the anasim, I will see in a moment who these people are, when they became numerous. Hitzkino shemadiam the shchena l'modav v'dayav. And then they made a taikana that you should tell the neighbors and other friends, and that's enough. Says the Gemara, what exactly does that mean? My misharabu hanasim. What does it mean that these anasim became numerous? You know it is those that would say that those who made that all lost objects should belong to the king, and therefore anytime they would announce something, the intended owner wouldn't get it because they would make it go to the king. Therefore, they changed course not to announce it in the shuls, but rather just announce it amongst one's neighbors and friends. Ravami Ashkach Oidaya. 3 lines from the white lines, he found Oidaya de Dinri, a vessel of gold coins. Chazye Ahu Bar Nosh Tkamirsis. And then Ravashi saw that there's a certain person who was Mirsas, he was afraid that he would take away the item from him. He said to Ravami, go take it for yourself. Don't worry, we're not the Persians, Zamri Avidah Malka, who say that all Avidas should go to the king. And another Braisa, Tana Rabbanan, moving over to the first white line, Even Toyin Haisev Yerushalayim. There was a stone, a claiming stone in Yerushalayim, called Mish Aveda Lo Aveda, of the Aveda, who lost the lost item. Niftal Sham would go there. Chamisha Maitza Aveda, who found it Aveda Niftal Sham. This one would announce, this one gives simanim. What it means, this is Gemara and Tainus. They said go check if that Evan Atayin, which was a specific stone, became dissolved. We continue with the Mishnah. If let's say someone comes along, so it says, yes, I lost that item. However, he does not have simanim, loy, itin loy. We do not give it to him. If a person is a ramai, we don't even give it to him if he gives simanim. Till you look into your brother, your friend, im ramai hu im enoi ramai. Says the Gemara into Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Yehuda Machris of Nachman Amar. Kalima Machris, as we saw in the bottom of Rabban Aleph, Machlekes, what exactly do you announce? Do you announce that you found an item, or do you announce the item that was found? Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Yehuda Machris, you announce you just found an item. Why? The Amar Kalima Machris say the actual item. Chashinan leRamai. Rav Nachman Amar Kalima Machris leRamai leChashinan. Tim Kane says Rav Nachman ain't never safe. There's no end to this. Therefore, we do not have to be suspectful of the Ramai. Tanan, the Gemara asks on Rav Nachman that says you announced the shirt. Our Mishnah said, Amar Savedav Lamar Simanel Arizalitin Loi. So Amar Bisham Avidatamachers, if you announce that an item was found, the guy came and he got the right item. Still, Kiloi Amar Simanim Lo Madrina Lei. Eli Amri Galima Machris. Amar you, Klima, Amar you, Klima, Srich Lamemar. He didn't say anything. So what's the Chiddush? We announced that we found the shirt. And he comes and says, I lost the shirt. Shkayach. What are you teaching me? Kilamar Simanim Lo Madrina Lei. What's the Chiddush? Answers the Gemara, Amar Rav Safra, Lo'ilam Klima Machras. Really, it could be like Rav Nachman that says you do announce that you found a shirt. Amar Ihu Klimi, V'Amar Ihu Simanim. He said, lost a shirt. He found a shirt. And he said, I lost a shirt. And this is a simon. So what did the Mishnah mean when it spoke out that you didn't say the simanim? You didn't give a simon mukvak. You didn't give a distinct characteristic. That's what the Mishnah meant. You did give a simon. We continue. We're halfway through the very wide lines of Chav Chesem Beis, the two dots. For Ramai, we don't even give it to him. If he gives simanim, Tan Rabbanan says the Gemara. Parishaina originally go mishavda heavy. Daina says simanim and I'll take him mishabda Ramayin. When the Ramayim, the trickers, the liars, were numerous. Skinu she'ayim loy say. Skinu she'ayim loy say v'hava edim delav Ramayat. Bring me character witnesses. Bring me proof that you're not a Ramay. The toll. Like the father, Erches Lei Chamer lost his donkey. Bring witnesses, you're not a Ramay, V'tol. Ozlaisi Sadi, Amr Lei Aditin Beit, the Ramay who? Amr Lein, Amr Leho, Anoramo. And so what happened was that Rabbi Rav Huna said to the witness, do you know if the Avua Drapapa is a Ramay? And they said, yes, we know. So Rapapa's Amar Lahu Anoramayana. So Rapapa's father says, what? Amar Ramay? So Amrulay. So they said, Anan Lav Ramay Ad Kaminan. We meant to say that you're not a Ramay. They asked, can you give character witnesses? And he said, yes. He didn't mean to say yes, and he's a Ramay. He meant to say yes, that he's not a Ramay. Hamar Rabba Ravuna. Says Rav Huna Mistavra Lo Meisi Inji Chayvas L'Navshei. It makes a lot of sense because there's no reason he would bring Eidim to prove that he is a Ramay. So must be that's what the Eidim were indeed coming to prove. And we'll just begin the Mishnah. We'll pick it up for the Gemara in the next year. It says the Mishnah the Banu Chesam Beis called Davar Shaisav Eichel Yasev Yoich. Any item that works and eats an ox and donkey, when you found it, you put it to work, and from that which it produces, you feed it. Doesn't produce but he eats. Yimkar, sell the item. Shenamar v'shivay. You should return the item to the owner. Roy, see, how can you return it to him? Meaning if the item just consumes and doesn't work, so if you're going to spend the money, there's going to be nothing to return to the owner, as we'll see. Therefore, sell the item. What should we do with the money? Yishtamish. Bahem says Rav Tarfin, you're allowed to use the money. Lefikach im avdu. Therefore, if the money is lost, chaybach yusin, because you're allowed to use it. Rav Kimar you're not allowed to use the money. Lefikach im avdu. Ein chaybach yusin like Shem Rechinam. Pick up from the Gemara and we'll delve deeper into this Mishnah on the next year. B'siyata dishmaya.